Go ahead and move forward. And what we're here to talk about today is how to vet and implement HR tech. It's something that, everybody has to do at some point in their career, but they don't always necessarily know all the steps or all the good best practices for it. So I had to invite Tony to this webinar today because he's got the background for it. And I think that there's some really great shared insights that you'll get out of the call today. So we'll go ahead and move forward with our agenda. We'd love to talk about a few key pieces of what goes into vetting and implementing technology, right? So, the very first, of course, starting with identifying what technology is even required in the first place, all the way to the very end where we're measuring success and we're looking at how to continuously improve on the technology that we're bringing and the experience that end users have. So I'd love to first just do some quick introductions for myself. My name is Jocelyn King. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called VirgilHR. And VirgilHR is an employment and labor law compliance software. As an HR practitioner myself, I've worked predominantly for high growth technology companies. And being high growth, we were hiring in a lot of states very quickly. And it just became so difficult tracking and complying with employment and labor laws, particularly at that state and local level. And I don't know what was wrong with me, but I felt compelled to start a company to address that. So I quit my job about 4 years ago to do that. And now we have this really incredible product that I'd highly encourage you to take a look at if you're not using it today. And I'll pass it over to you, Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Jocelyn. So I met Jocelyn, touring a bunch of HR tech conferences and learning more about her amazing business, which is incredible. And it's such a great story about understanding a need, coming from HR and really appreciating that need, and then leveraging technology to solve it, which is what this is all about. How do we leverage technology to make our lives easier? I spent 20 years in HR, kind of climbing the ranks until I was a CHRO for a Fortune 500 public company. And throughout that period of time, different experiences with tech, probably not enough. Because once I left and I really got into the world I am today, which is more in the flexible workforce space, I've been exposed to so much more tech that existed before. And now there's even more choices. So I know it can be overwhelming, which is why I'm so excited to help people try and navigate this space. Now I'm at a company called Human Cloud, which I co-founded with Matt Matola and Paul Polo. We love to live at the middle of the flexible workforce world. There's so much going on with the way that labor is changing because of technology and the relationship you have with businesses because of technology. We want to help companies navigate that. We want to connect them to the right marketplaces and tools. And we want to help those marketplaces and tools amplify what they can do in their capabilities. So we do that through a platform that we've created, as well as events and thought leadership. I encourage you to follow us to learn a lot more. But thanks for the intro, Jocelyn.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we'll jump right into it. Identifying what technology is required. This might seem like a no-brainer, but we have to talk about this from the very beginning because really what is so important is taking a look at the objectives that your organization has and the objectives that your business unit in HR has, and seeing, where can technology assist you to achieve those goals. What are your current pain points as an organization? What gaps exist on the technology front? All those are super, super important when it comes to really mapping out what technology is required for the HR organization within your workplace. And it's also really important too, and this might sound kind of silly, but it's really important to consider not just what's happening today or this year, but what's happening 3 years from now, 5 years from now within your org, so that you can ensure that there's scalability with whatever technology you choose. And that if possible, or if it makes sense for your organization, that it actually integrates into existing systems you have or systems that you recognize you will need in the future. Joni, I don't know if there's any color that you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, you said it. It may seem obvious, but it's not. Especially as you start to dig into technology, it's easy to be attracted to the bright, shiny object. There's a lot of sexy solutions out there that offer all sorts of different, new capabilities and features. But if you chase those, what you'll find is you just keep chasing, and it's like you're running downhill
Mhm.
instead of really thinking about where that pain is. And it might be in things like, background checks or payroll or, verification, different things that aren't the things that rise to the surface. But if you had like a lean Kaizen approach and you thought of a value stream map and where the real waste is in your processes, those are great places to target to tear out all the manual effort that exists in slowing things down that will free up you and your HR team to be a lot more productive with just added technology. It doesn't have to be, a crazy humanoid robot that's your solution. It could just be an automated process or a couple triggers that help your team be a lot more efficient.
100%. It could even be configuring Slack for that matter if you use Slack internally. I remember we used Slack as part of our onboarding process at a company that I was with to better improve employee engagement in particular during the onboarding process. There was an app within Slack called Donut. Have you heard of it, Tony?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Use it
it's really cool. Basically, it just like automatically matches employees with other people randomly across the organization to encourage them to have a little coffee chat together. So it doesn't even have to be anything major like a Bamboo integration or a Paycor integration, which I put in here since they're partners of ours. It can be something a whole lot more simple, but there's a good bang for your buck out of it. So the next consideration here is budgeting and finances. Tony, you've got a ton of experience with this. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think in HR, your finance person needs to be your best friend. And it might be a CFO or it might be an FP&A leader, but someone that is not only studying your function and your spend, but other parts of the business so that they also understand where you're looking for a return on your investment, where you're looking for areas that seem like they're less efficient that you want to make improvements in. They can help you in that process, but more importantly, they'll be your partner if you include them from the beginning on getting that investment buy-in budget approval, and that's really critical. So I think being really open about what you're trying to accomplish and partnering with the finance team to understand what buckets you have to work with is really critical to making sure you get that budget part right.
Yes, I would totally agree. Including them from the beginning is key from a buy-in perspective. I'd also, and I put this in here because I've been saying victim to this is dramatic, but have certainly experienced situations where hidden costs were truly hidden until it was too late. And so I'd really encourage you as you're speaking to whichever vendors you're considering that you get full transparency on any costs that are going to be associated to this. Because the last thing that you want to do is go to your CFO in the beginning and say, hey, this is going to cost $3 per employee per month. And then you get approval on it, and then you have to go back 2 months later and say, actually, there's also a support cost, and it's an additional 50 cents PEPM. It just, it doesn't help the cause, so to speak, but it also kind of puts a little bit of strain on the budget when you've already gotten approval in the first place to move forward with a different amount. So just be sure that you get, full visibility into what those hidden costs look like. And then as you're building out your kind of your argument, so to speak, for why this would be beneficial to the organization, why the CFO or whoever is head of finance should be engaged and supportive of what it is you're trying to do, is that cost benefit analysis. Taking a look at, how is this technology going to be improving HR, improving the end user, improving management? Is it a time savings aspect? Are they more efficient in some way? Are you better retaining your employees? Like, how do you quantify that to do cost benefit analysis? You want to make sure that you're incorporating that into your overall plan as well.
Yeah, I think another cross-functional resource that can help you here, and this is probably one of the few times that I'll actually elevate, celebrate the procurement function, but your friends in procurement, as long as you're friends with them, they can really be valuable because everything that Jocelyn just said, especially in knowing the right questions to ask to surface what might be hidden costs or to things that maybe you would assume or take for granted. I mean, they're trained professionals in this area in terms of really vetting out what all is involved and what all the parameters are, and helping you set the right expectations in terms of your client expectations for that vendor. So that's another resource. Yeah, everything we do, of course, it improves if we're collaborative. You just don't want to pull in procurement and they take your project over, and they make you go through a rigorous process that you don't really need. So think about, and maybe your finance leader can help advise when the right time is to pull them in. But to me, when I've had really productive collaborative relationships with procurement, they've been so helpful in identifying what's in that kind of window that we can't see, to make sure that we're getting what we expect, we're setting the right boundaries, and also help us avoid scope creep, things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even think about procurement, Tony, probably because I have struggled in the past, including them. But I think you're totally right. Bring them in at the right point, and they can be super helpful. So the next step is building the right project team. It's interesting because, oops, can you see my screen? Tony, do you see my screen?
I couldn't see it before, but I know it was visible.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, my screen's gone completely black. Here we go.
All
Okay.
right.
Um, so it's something that I've kind of experienced in my own career in human resources is that unless you have either gotten a degree in change management, have held a role specifically in change management, or have been part of a team where you were trained on change management, you're not necessarily going to have that experience. And that is so critical for these types of projects. So, change management starts from the very, very beginning, and it starts with building the right project team. So it's really important to include the right stakeholders right off the bat. It isn't just you or other people on the HR team, it's going to be other areas of the business as well that will need to get involved at some point along the way. And getting them involved from the very beginning is critical. That's going to be like data security, it's going to be IT, it's going to be finance and even procurement, legal and compliance. It's going to be your management team as well. So figuring out who on the management team you need initial buy-in from the very beginning will be critical. And in true change management fashion, you also want end user representation as well. So that part is really key. And the reason why is because you want to ensure that adoption is there more often than not. And this is sad to say, but a lot of HR technology implementations fail because there's lack of adoption due to a lack of change management in the process. So that part will be really key. And then defining those roles and responsibilities is important as well. Tony, you've done this so many times. Anything you'd like to add when it comes to building the right project team?
Well, I think, like you said, it's critical to be thinking about change management from the jump.
Mhm.
It's easy to do that when you're doing a major implementation like SAP or a new HRS or something like that. It's easy to think, okay, of course we have to assemble these teams and everybody's got these roles, and there's a very detailed project plan. But I would tell you, no matter how small the tech implementation, if it's new, be thinking about who that project team is, who are the critical people to be involved, the getting that user feedback and representation, because even if it's a small feature add or change, you want to make sure that the effort that you're putting into selecting this new technology and getting it implemented is rewarded by people actually embracing and using this new tool that you brought on. So if you don't think through that, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. It's worthwhile, even if it's a small project, to formalize those roles, build out the plan in advance, and at least share those expectations with the folks that are involved, so that you're setting yourself up for a better probability of success.
Yeah, absolutely. So securing executive buy-in, you are the perfect person to talk about this, Tony. So give give us all the good stuff. Tell us, what should we be doing when it comes to securing executive buy-in?
Yeah, I mean, I came up through GE and Stanley, and we were very finance driven. And so for me, it always started with that, which is why I started with you got to have a good friend in finance that can help you build out, what the current budget is, so you know what your baseline is. Always have that clear, what you expect to accomplish, what the return on that investment is, and that could be savings, it could just be save productivity, opening up more capability, more capacity for your HR team, which is really valuable, especially now when HR teams are just overloaded with things to do. But really build out setting those expectations so the team can see what you're ready to commit to in terms of the return for making this investment in technology. And when you drive that buy-in, make sure you're thinking about what set you on that path to begin with, which is the business strategy. What are we addressing in terms of it was a gap, it was a deficiency, this is something that's created issues in the past. How can you really expand on the pain so that when you flip it and you start talking about the gain, you really get folks on board with how this is going to improve the business overall. And
Mhm.
make sure you're touching all the different parts of the business that are impacted. Maybe it's your HR team, but most likely, if you're investing in technology for HR, it's impacting all of your employees. So, really make sure that you can identify and articulate how this benefits your employees, how it'll affect things like their productivity or their engagement because they understand better, what's going on with their benefits, communication is better, whatever it might be. Make sure you're really thinking through defining exactly what that return is so that when contrasted with that pain, that gain feels so good, it's going to be really difficult to turn away from. And I'll give you an example, if that's okay, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
I remember back when I was at Stanley, and I first discovered Upwork, which is a global talent marketplace. It took me a while to come around and understand what this is and how it could benefit our enterprise. But once I understood it, the key metric that I knew was going to mean a lot to my organization was speed to talent. So I know I just preached about finance, but I know the biggest pain was speed. When we always have a need, we got to get talent in, we got to start getting work done right away. Because when you start missing deadlines for things like product development or a launch, or the teams are spread too thin and they're beginning to get stressed or overwhelmed, all of those things just lead to your business struggling and suffering. And I know you've all lived through it. Like this is something we all that resonates, I think, with every HR person. So getting that speed to talent, I knew was something that we really had to stress where that value was and what the impact was. And then when I could describe the financials, these are the ways that this not only pays for itself for us in that business. If something covered, if you achieve savings that were equal to the cost within a year, so it paid for itself within a year, that was typically a really easy pitch. So knowing what those numbers are and where how you're deriving those savings are really important. But when that's like a secondary benefit, I knew for my organization that would help really get this across the finish line. And then as a third benefit, of course, it was the overall impact on engagement and the culture of the organization. So for something like that, we could get talent really fast. We could save versus the save versus well, we could cover the costs usually with the gaps we had in employment, which we had already budgeted but we weren't spending. We could save versus hires in a lot of different cases, and we could get just the talent we needed when we needed it. But then, most importantly, we could make sure that we're providing some relief on the organization through augmented staff, different resources, capabilities that we can't find internally because maybe the tech or IT team is already overwhelmed, so they can't work on your smaller project, but you can keep those things moving. So, understanding what's important to your organization, being able to articulate the benefit, and making sure that you know the numbers are really going to help you generate that buy in. The final thing I'll say is know who has the influence in the organization. There's leaders cross functionally. Hopefully, it's you as the HR leader that can really help the general manager, president, other key decision makers really understand the value to the overall organization. When someone that has that history, that knowledge is bought in and is willing to kind of, expend some of their internal social equity on this program, that's a huge win for you if you're trying to pitch a new program.
Yes, I'm glad that you brought that last part up, right? Like who is the influential person? Because what I was going to ask you, Tony, was who should you go to first, right? And maybe it's just I'm sure it totally depends on the type of technology you're trying to implement, but is it the CFO? Is it the CEO? Or is it the nexus of influence? Maybe your CTO is the most influential executive there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to follow my roots. It's usually the finance person that you want to get that buy-in. But for me, I always had a really good relationship with my finance team. That was important to me to get out of the gate. I knew that coming into the Stanley environment because it was just like GE. So I made sure to build those relationships early and make sure that we're constantly talking, collaborating, partnering. It's going to be different based on the different organizations. But I think that's such a critical role that when the two of you are partnered and then you want to loop in that influential leader, whether it's a product manager or the tech leader, it makes it a lot easier when you've got a partner in crime to help get you that leader on board. So I'd start though with that tactical key person that's going to help you deliver on the project and help you build out and maybe stress test your assumptions before you try to loop in a key influencer that you want to get on board with the idea and the concept to influence others.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. All right, security and data privacy considerations. This kind of goes without saying. So, Tony, I don't know if you have a lot to share here, but I think that a lot of these are pretty obvious things, right? Like if there are certain laws that you have to comply with based on your geography or industry that you're in, that is going to be really important, right? So, anything GDPR related or HIPAA related, for example, you'll want to make sure that you're partnering with IT and legal to vet the vendor that you're looking at or vendors that you're looking at to ensure that they have the appropriate data breach protocols, certifications like the SOC 2, for example, or an ISO. And, I think that another thing that you'll want to think about as well, depending on the type of technology you're implementing, is the data migration aspect and the integration risks. So, for example, if this was something big, like you were switching from one HRIS to another, what does that migration process look like? Who on your team is responsible for it? Are they bought in? Are they up to speed? What integration risks exist? So, as you scope out your project, you'll want to identify the risk areas, and this could be one of them. So, don't discount the importance of bringing IT and legal into this process as well. No matter the size of your organization, big or small, we all have to comply with a lot of these laws. And so we just want to make sure we have all of our bases covered.
Yeah, I think any technology, and this is increasingly important as I talk to more and more founders and more enterprise leaders, the most important thing is trust. Trust in their capabilities, that they have the right certifications. There's some things where you can check the box. There's others where you really have to understand how they're getting this work done for you or how they're delivering in order to make sure that you trust what this technology is supposed to do and that your employees will as well. So to me, when we talk about security and compliance, we're really talking about trust and what's going to make you feel most comfortable from a risk mitigation standpoint for you and your organization. Not every new technology business, there's tons of great startups that have really impressive new technology. They might not have everything that a larger technology provider will have. Make sure you know what the highest priority is. And maybe you don't have a legal team. Maybe your business is small, but you usually probably have a retained legal counsel that you can ask questions to make sure you know what are the most important things to look for to make sure that you're fully compliant, to make sure you know where the liability lies if or when something goes wrong. Sometimes that's spelled out in the contract or agreement, but those are all key things. You just have to make sure if you're going to be putting your neck on the line for new technology, that you know it's something that you can trust and that the rest of the organization can as well.
Absolutely. And actually, you kind of touched on this a little bit, Tony. Especially for technologies out there that aren't going to be processing any type of private information, or, aren't integrated into your other systems, it might not be necessary for them to have certain security certifications. Like, don't don't limit yourself to the vendors that are out there without fully understanding what is really important in the diligence that you're doing. There are absolutely going to be cases when a SOC 2, for example, is 100% critical and your IT team will not work with a vendor that's not SOC 2 compliant, and that's fine. But from a risk perspective, also think, is this absolutely required based on how we're going to be using this technology and the data this technology is going to be processing on our behalf?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, there are a lot of great new technologies that are affordable because they're new. You don't want to put this unnecessary burden or this huge hurdle for them to get over when it's not even relevant. So that's a really good point, Jocelyn. And I think it's important for, all of you to be open to different technologies, even if they don't have every single check mark that might exist. Like she said, you don't necessarily need it.
Yeah. Okay, so my favorite part, change management, implementation, user adoption, and change management. So this obviously, just like everything else, right? It's super critical. When we take a look at implementation best practices, this is all about, are you project managing? If you're with a bigger organization, it might even be worth having a project manager, an internal project manager, come in and assist you with this. But if you don't have that opportunity, um, project managing is going to be really key. So, setting milestones, setting success metrics, doing a pilot, for example, those are all really key. Phased rollouts, depending on the type of tech and the size of your organization or the complexity, also really critical as well. User adoption strategies, I mentioned earlier, this is where a lot of these projects fall flat, is that there aren't good user adoption strategies in place that not only encourage people to use it, but really involve them early on, not just in the selection process, but in testing as well, involving them in even communication as well. I always found it to be really helpful to have change advocates within every level of an organization that could assist us with messaging, for example, and could assist us with really bolstering adoption across the organization. And then the last piece here that's really important to consider is the change management aspect. Of course, this starts from the very, very beginning of the project, but one piece that we haven't talked about quite yet, and we will here toward the end, that's super important, is the ongoing feedback loops and the improvement cycles, right? This isn't a one and done thing. If you are implementing a new HRIS, you're not just going to make it available to everybody and then never seek any feedback from a user again. That's where we have adoption issues that really take place. The improvement cycles, how can we, maybe there's an add-on that this HRIS has that we will find to be really valuable because learning has now become an increasingly important directive across the organization, and they've got a great LMS module, for example. So how can we improve on the offering that we're providing to our users? Our users are like our customers. Our employees are like our customers. We're here to take care of them. And part of that, of course, means giving them a really good experience and helping them be as efficient as possible as well. But Tony, I know you've got a lot to say about this too. What would you like to add?
Yeah, I think if anybody out there, I like where you finish this, really thinking about our employees as our customers, our internal customers, our clients, and making sure a lot of times within HR, we have to give them a more consumer-based experience. So I think of every time I update my Apple iOS on my phone and things move around or there's new apps I didn't know about, and like I get annoyed and frustrated and I haven't even checked them out yet. That's exactly how your employees feel whenever you roll something out that's new and they feel like, why are we even doing this? Is this even, could this whole, technology change just been an email? You want to get in front of that. And I love that Jocelyn said, think about change management from the beginning. And it may even require a project manager. Maybe you don't have that skill set or it's not available within the team. To me, this is why I like fractional or on-demand talent marketplaces, because you can rent that skill set, that expertise for when you need it. That's one of the things I love about it. To make sure that this project goes well, having the right project management, mapping it out, thinking about all the different things that need to get involved. When you plan for all that, when something else that you didn't plan goes haywire, it makes it a lot easier to deal with. So I think for that, that's really important. But you also have to think of that cultural change management. Everybody feels kind of overloaded by technology, or at least intimidated by any kind of technology or new tech. So when you want to introduce something, make sure they understand the what's in it for me. Why is this valuable for me? And build that kind of marketing approach into your change management to make sure that people understand what the point of this whole effort is, what they're going to get out of it, and how easy hopefully it is for them to get engaged and leverage and use this new tool. You have to think about it from the beginning, or else you could really find halfway through nobody's using your new tech that you were so excited about and waving a flag for, and now you got to start all over from the beginning.
Hmm. Yeah, internal communications is key. So if you have a marketing team that assists you with that, you're in great shape. But sometimes it sits under HR. So employing that as a strategy in this process is going to be really critical. And the what's in it for me, yeah, Tony, you're right. It's really important because if people don't understand how it benefits them in some way, and I don't mean in a selfish way, it could just be, in what they do for the company, or how good they can be at their job, then it will generally fall flat, which is unfortunate because the next time you go to a CFO and you're trying to get executive buy-in and you want to get this new technology, you've got an uphill battle ahead of yourself.
Yeah, make it easy for yourself. You do all that work ahead of time so that people get on board and they use it, and then you're gonna have all the great metrics that show that this paid off. So the next time you go, it makes it a lot easier. But it really does require that forethought.
Yeah. Okay, and the last piece is measuring success and continuous improvement. So, before I go to the next slide, one of the things that we talked about in the very, very beginning was as you're project managing this, putting together milestones or success metrics. So that will be really key to do that in the beginning so that throughout the project, and then once you go live, you have these success metrics that are consistent, that are continuous, and that's going to be really key. So, measuring success is critical, and you can do this through surveys. You can do it through KPIs that you're tracking, whether it's like maybe it's an ATS and it's a time to hire, or it's an engagement tool and it's all about retention. And then continuous improvement, which we've talked about a little bit already. So, taking a look at your organization and anticipating as your organization grows and as the needs of your workforce change, what needs to be continuously improved in the technology that you're offering to your workforce today.
Yeah, I think it's it's oftentimes people start focusing on the metrics or results that they want to show that show the improvement without taking the time to get alignment on what the baseline is. Like what is it before? Because if you start working on the technology and you start implementing it and you are looking at your what you thought your metrics were that were important, you might find that you didn't have an agreement on, well, when did the baseline really start? What's the true like reflection point that we can measure against to show improvement against? Make sure that that baseline has as much quantitative data as possible, and don't hesitate to include qualitative, which is some of the feedback that you'll get on the implementation on the tool. Make sure that you've got that well balanced. There should probably be more quantitative than qualitative, but all of that should make the case, and it should align with the organization's strategic objectives and goals. But that I can't stress that enough. I think back to my time at Upwork, where I spent 3 years, and we worked with a lot of enterprises on implementing the new marketplace tools. Um, Oftentimes, we just were so eager to show them what we could do. We just get right out there and start filling jobs and solving problems without establishing what the metrics were that we started with, so we could show them after a month or 2 months, here's the improvement versus where you were before. And when you try to do that after the fact, it makes it a lot more difficult not only for you to demonstrate that improvement, but for anybody to care about trying to figure out what the baseline was to begin with. So you really need to try to do that up front.
Yep, 100%. Okay, so this takes us to the end of our presentation. I figured I'd open it up for Q&A. Tony, I asked you to man the Q&A section. Do you have it available?
Yes, I do. Nothing in there
Awesome.
yet, other than Paul Polo telling me hi and that he missed you at the festival this weekend.
Okay, cool. Well, while we're waiting for anything to come through, a couple of things here just in terms of housekeeping. So, if you're interested in learning more about Virgil HR and you'd like to schedule a demo, please feel free to scan this QR code here. The SHRM activity code is here on the bottom if you're here to gain some SHRM PDCs. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for folks to send any questions our way, Tony, do you want to share a little more about Human Cloud and how people can find you?
Yeah, of course, they can go to humancloud.com or humancloudapp.com and learn more about what we do to help enable enterprises to design, build, and scale their flexible workforce programs. To me, the reason I joined Human Cloud after years and years of kind of corporate HR is because I really believe this is a key part of the future of work, the way that organizations are going to have to operate in order to navigate like this incredibly difficult to predict world that we live in. You have to have agility, flexibility within your organization. And you can accomplish a lot of that through on demand talent of all levels of skill sets and capabilities. Not to mention the fact that more people, majority of people, want to work independently these days. So this is where they all come together. You can check out our websites. Of course, you should follow me on LinkedIn and all of my great insights that we like to share once in a while, anytime. And we do events throughout the year, dinners, and we do, of course, our podcast. So lots of opportunities to check us out, follow all of us, and we'll help you figure out how to navigate this new world of work.
Awesome, thank you. If you'd like to reach out to me at any point in time too, please feel free to do so on LinkedIn. My email is here as well. And again, if you'd like to learn more about Virgil, go ahead and scan that code or look us up online. Thank you so much. Happy Veterans Day, and please express our thanks to any spouses or family members or friends of yours who are veterans.
Including Paul Polo. Thanks for your service, Paul.
All right, take care.